I came to my sister's wedding expecting to be invisible, just the boring sibling in the back, smiling through the jokes like I always do. Then her groom stared at me like he had found the target he had been hunting for years, when my sister lifted the mic to turn me into a punchline. He crossed the room, slapped her, and told her to stop lying because she had been stealing from me. And tonight, it ends. My name is Brooke Bryant. And at 34 years old, I have mastered the art of becoming furniture. I stood at the edge of the sprawling waterfront lawn in Charleston, South Carolina, watching the sunset bleed orange and purple across the harbor. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of expensive jasmine arrangements, the kind that cost more per stem than I used to spend on a week of groceries. Inside the tent, the reception was in full swing. It was a masterpiece of coastal elegance, a vision of white linen, crystal glassware, and old Southern money, or at least, the appearance of it. I smoothed the fabric of my dress, a simple navy sheath that I had bought off the rack 3 years ago. It was not flashy, it was not memorable. That was the point. I learned a long time ago that in the Bryant family, attention is not a gift, it is a weapon. If they do not see you, they cannot use you to make themselves look taller. I made my way to my assigned seat at table 19. It was what everyone in the wedding industry calls the leftover table. It was positioned just close enough to the kitchen swing doors that every time a waiter came out with a tray of crab cakes, I got a blast of steam and shouting, but far enough from the head table that I was essentially in a different zip code. I was seated next to a second cousin I had not spoken to since I was 12, and a couple from Delaney's yoga studio who clearly wondered what they had done wrong to end up back here with the socially awkward sister. I took a sip of lukewarm water and looked toward the dance floor. There she was, the bride, my younger sister, Delaney Bryant. She glowed. There was no other word for it. She looked like she had walked straight out of a bridal magazine cover, the kind you see in the checkout line and think cannot possibly be real. Her blonde hair was swept up in a chignon that defied gravity. Her smile was blindingly white, and her dress was a custom lace creation that hugged her figure with absolute perfection. She moved through the crowd of 300 guests with the grace of a politician and the charm of a pageant queen, laughing at jokes she had probably heard a dozen times. Touching arms, tilting her head just so. She was perfect control wrapped in silk. I looked down at my plate, trying to make myself smaller, but the air in Charleston carries sound incredibly well. "That is the sister," a woman whispered loudly from the table behind me. I did not turn around, but I could hear the click of her tongue. "The one who never married." "She looks so serious," another voice replied, dripping with that faux sympathy that is unique to the South. "I heard she thinks she is better than everyone, just focuses on her career. Sad." "Really? Delaney said she tried to get her involved in the planning, but you know how it is." I cut a piece of my chicken with surgical precision. Delaney said that was the magic phrase. Delaney could say the sky was neon green, and by noon, half this room would be wearing neon green sunglasses. The narrative was already set. I was the cold, career-obsessed spinster, and Delaney was the warm, vibrant heart of the family who had found her prince. And he really was a prince, or the American military equivalent. Lieutenant Commander Cole Mercer stood near the bar, looking less like a groom and more like a man guarding a state secret. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing his dress whites with a rigidity that made the other men in the room look sloppy. He was a Navy SEAL, a man whose entire career was built on precision and silence. I had never met him before this week. Delaney had moved fast. A whirlwind romance, a quick engagement, and now this lavish wedding that seemed to have materialized out of thin air in less than 6 months. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. It was the same sensation I got at work when I found a discrepancy in a ledger that did not add up. I looked up. Cole Mercer was staring right at me. It was not the look of a new brother-in-law welcoming me to the family. He was scanning the room, his eyes moving over the faces of the guests with practiced indifference, until they locked onto me. He stopped. His gaze sharpened. It was intense, almost predatory, like he had been hunting for something all night and had finally found the one name on his target list. It wasn't hatred, exactly. It was recognition. He looked at me like I was a threat he needed to neutralize, or maybe a clue to a puzzle he was desperate to solve. My heart did a strange, uncomfortable stutter in my chest. I looked away, pretending to be fascinated by the centerpiece, but my instincts were screaming. I work in fraud investigation. I spend my life looking for the things people try to hide in the margins. I know when the energy in a room shifts. I risked another glance, not at Cole, but at the men standing near him. There were 4 of them. They had to be his team. They were built like linebackers, wearing suits that strained at the shoulders, holding beer bottles they weren't really drinking. They weren't watching the dance floor. They weren't looking at the bridesmaids. They were watching my parents' table. They were watching Delaney. Their eyes were constantly moving, mapping the exits, checking the perimeter. They looked like they were on a security detail in a hostile zone, not guests at a low-country wedding. Why would a groom's team be watching the bride's family with that kind of suspicion? A sharp tapping sound cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "Hello? Is this thing on?" Delaney stood center stage, microphone in hand, her other hand raising a flute of champagne. The spotlight hit her, and she bloomed under it. She was already laughing before she even spoke, a breathless, infectious sound that signaled to everyone that it was time to be happy, time to adore her. "I just want to say," she began, her voice trembling with perfectly calibrated emotion, "how lucky I am to be here, with all of you, surrounded by so much love." The room cooed. Handkerchiefs were dabbed at eyes. "And I want to thank my family," she continued, her eyes sweeping the room. "My amazing parents, who gave everything so I could have this day." She blew a kiss to our mother, Judith, who was dabbing her eyes at the head table. Next to her, my father sat in his wheelchair, looking vaguely confused, his gaze drifting toward the ceiling. The stroke had taken so much of him, leaving him in a fog that only cleared in rare, heartbreaking moments. Seeing him propped up there like a prop in Delaney's play made my stomach turn. My purse vibrated against my leg. I pulled my phone out under the table, shielding the screen with my hand. It was a message from my boss at Halcyon Integrity Partners. It was Saturday night. He never texted on Saturday nights unless the building was burning down. "We need to talk Monday. Something came in. It is not good." I stared at the gray bubble. Something came in my line of work. That usually meant a subpoena, a federal inquiry, or a client realizing they had lost millions. I looked up at Delaney, who was now pivoting, her smile sharpening at the edges as her eyes searched the back of the room. She was looking for me. I knew the look. It was the look she gave right before she threw someone under the bus to save herself. Usually me. I looked back at the text message. My career was the one thing I had built for myself, the one fortress Delaney couldn't breach. If something was wrong at Halcyon, my safety net was dissolving. I turned the phone face down on the tablecloth. I could not deal with a work crisis tonight. I had to survive this toast. I had to survive the whispers. I had to survive the way Cole Mercer was looking at me from across the room, like he was waiting for me to make a wrong move. Delaney took a breath, and the room went silent, waiting for her punchline. I took a breath too, bracing myself. I did not want trouble tonight. I just wanted to be the boring sister at table 19. But as Delaney's eyes locked onto mine and her smile widened into something predatory, I realized what I should have known all along. Trouble does not ask for permission. It just finds you. I watched Delaney hold the room in the palm of her hand, and suddenly I was 17 again, sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of final notice envelopes while she practiced her cheerleading routine in the living room. That was the dynamic we settled into before I even had a driver's license. I was the built-in adult, the one who knew that electricity cost money and that groceries did not magically appear in the refrigerator. Delaney was the atmosphere. She was the bright spot. My parents told me I was so mature, so reliable, which is the polite way of saying I was useful. They told Delaney she was a ray of sunshine, which is the polite way of saying she was exempt. I looked over at my father. Ray. He was slumped slightly to the left in his wheelchair, his tie a little crooked. The stroke 2 years ago had stolen his speech and his mobility, leaving him trapped in a body that refused to cooperate. He blinked slowly, the festive lights reflecting in eyes that looked bewildered. He did not know this was a wedding. He probably did not know who I was right now. To the rest of the world, Delaney was his angel. Her Instagram feed was a curated gallery of hospital selfies and touching captions about the heartbreaking honor of caring for an aging parent. She called herself the devoted daughter. She got hundreds of likes and comments praising her sacrifice. But holding a hand for a photo is free. The assisted living facility in North Charleston, where Dad actually lives, costs $6,000 a month. The specialized physical therapy is another $2,000. The medications are hundreds more. Delaney does not pay those bills. I do. Every single month, for the last 24 months, the money leaves my account and goes to the facility. I have never asked for credit. I have never posted a receipt. I just pay it because if I don't, the care stops. And the only thing scarier than being invisible to my family is the thought of my father being neglected because his daughters were too busy fighting over who gets the credit. This is what I do. It is who I am. My job at Halcyon Integrity Partners is not something I talk about at parties because it makes people nervous. I am a forensic accountant, but that title is too clean. I am a bloodhound for numbers. I track fraud. I trace money through mazes of shell companies and offshore accounts. I follow paper trails that people think they have destroyed. I spend my days looking at the ugliness people try to hide behind polished surfaces. Delaney hates my job. She says I'm cynical. She says I look for the worst in people. But the truth is simpler than that. Delaney thrives on stories. She builds narratives where she is the hero, the victim, or the princess, depending on what she needs that day. I thrive on receipts. Stories can be embellished. Receipts do not lie. My gaze drifted to the table setting. The menu was printed on thick, textured cardstock with gold leaf lettering. The napkin rings were heavy brass. There was a champagne tower in the corner that must have cost more than my first car. This wedding was a 6-figure event. I did the math in my head automatically. The venue, the catering, the band, the custom dress. It was easily a $100,000 night. And that math made my stomach turn over. Delaney is a freelance social media consultant. That is the title she uses. It means she helps small boutiques pick filters for their posts. It is not a job that pays for gold leaf and champagne towers. And Cole? He is a Navy SEAL. He makes a decent government salary, but he is not a millionaire. Not unless he has family money I don't know about. But judging by the rented tuxedos on his side of the aisle, I doubted it. So where did the money come from? The question gnawed at me, scratching at a secret I had buried deep in my chest. Last year, Delaney had called me in the middle of the night, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She said she was in trouble, real trouble. She said she had made a mistake with an investment, that she owed people who were not forgiving, and that she was terrified. She begged me for help. She begged me not to tell Mom or Dad because the stress would kill them. I transferred $120,000 to an account she gave me. It was my life savings. It was the down payment for a house I'd been saving for since I was 22. I wiped it out in 10 seconds because she was my little sister, and she said she was scared. She promised to pay me back. She promised she would get her life together. I never asked what the money was for. I was too afraid of the answer. I just wanted the problem to go away. But looking around this tent, at the crystal chandeliers and the imported flowers, a cold, hard realization settled in my gut. I picked up the program again, flipping it over to the back where the vendors were listed in small, elegant font. My eyes scanned the list. Catering by Southern Palette, music by the Charleston Sound, event coordination by Verity Planning Group. I froze. Verity Planning Group. I knew that name, not because they were a famous wedding planner, but because of the structure. I had seen an LLC with a nearly identical name 2 weeks ago in a file at work regarding a charity fraud scheme. It was a shell, a ghost entity used to funnel money from nonprofits into private pockets under the guise of consulting fees or event management. I stared at the paper. The logo was a simple V, stylized exactly like the one I had seen on a subpoena. It could be a coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. Delaney was messy. She was selfish. But she wasn't a criminal. She wouldn't wash stolen money through her own wedding. That was insane. That was prison-level stupidity. Stop it, I told myself. Turn it off. I closed my eyes for a second, forcing the forensic part of my brain to shut down. I was at a wedding. I was drinking bad wine. I was supposed to be the supportive sister, not the investigator building a case against the bride. I needed to let it go. I needed to believe the lie for just one night. But that is the problem with seeing patterns. Once you see the edges of the puzzle, you cannot unsee the picture it forms. Delaney tapped the microphone again, the sharp feedback whine slicing through the air. She giggled, a sound that was light and effervescent and completely manufactured. So, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that the microphone amplified to every corner of the tent. I have to tell a little story about my big sister, Brooke. My blood ran cold. I had told myself not today. I had promised myself I would not let the darkness in. I had paid the bills. I had kept the secrets. I had swallowed the insults. I had done everything to keep the peace. But as Delaney locked eyes with me, her smile twisting into something sharp and cruel, I realized that my silence had never purchased peace. It had only purchased her ammunition. And she was about to fire. The microphone feedback squealed again, a sharp electronic shriek that silenced the murmurs of the crowd. Delaney laughed. That practiced, bubbling sound that made everyone lean in. She held the room hostage with her charisma, her eyes bright and glassy under the tent lights. You know, she began, her voice dropping to a confidential purr that echoed through the speakers. People always ask me how two sisters can be so different. Me, the free spirit, the one who follows her heart. She paused for effect, pressing a hand to her chest. And then there is Brooke. A ripple of polite laughter moved through the room. I sat frozen, my hands clenched in my lap. I knew this script. I had been a character in it my whole life. Brooke is the responsible one, Delaney continued, tilting her head with a look of exaggerated pity. The one who stays home on Friday nights to balance her checkbook. The one who thinks fun is a tax deduction. More laughter, louder this time. It was easy to laugh at the caricature she painted. It was safe. But seriously, Delaney said, her smile tightening just enough that I saw the shark beneath the surface. I worry about her. I really do. She has this sad little job in a basement somewhere, chasing numbers, obsessing over pennies. It must be so lonely. Brooke, honestly, I think that is why she is sitting back there all by herself tonight. Jealousy is a heavy color to wear. Sweetie. The air in the tent shifted. It wasn't just a roast anymore. It was a dissection. Guests turned in their chairs, craning their necks to look at table 19. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from shame, but from a cold, hard anger that started in my gut and spread to my fingertips. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped loudly against the wooden floorboards. I stood up. I did not scream. I did not throw my drink. I just stood there, smoothing the front of my dress, and looked directly at her. The room went dead silent. I do not do sad little jobs, Delaney, I said. My voice was not amplified, but in the sudden quiet, it carried perfectly. And I do not work in a basement. I recover what people steal. Delaney's smile didn't falter, but her eyes went hard. She gripped the microphone tighter, her knuckles turning white. She wasn't used to me speaking back. I was the bill payer, the secret keeper, the doormat. Doormats do not speak. Oh, listen to her, Delaney said into the mic, her voice dripping with condescension. Always the drama queen, always making everything about money. It is pathetic. Brooke, really. She took a step closer to the edge of the stage, looming over the crowd. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with money, she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. If you hadn't been so controlling and cheap, maybe you wouldn't have stressed Dad out so much. Maybe he wouldn't be in that chair right now. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a physical blow. I felt the breath leave my lungs. She had taken the single greatest tragedy of our lives, our father's stroke, and weaponized it. She had blamed me, the one who paid for his care, me, the one who argued with insurance companies until my throat was raw, me, the one who sat by his bed while she was at brunch, across the room, near the bar. Lieutenant Commander Cole Mercer went rigid. It was instantaneous. 1 second he was the stoic Groom, and the next, he was a statue carved from ice. His posture shifted, his shoulders squaring, his head snapping up. The 4 men standing behind him, his team, stopped smiling. They set their beers down on the high-top table in unison. It was a small movement, but it signaled a massive shift in the room's energy. The threat level had just changed. Delaney didn't notice. She was too high on her own performance. She looked down at me, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She thought she had buried me. She lowered the microphone just an inch, leaning forward so that her voice wouldn't carry to the back of the room. But her lips moved clearly enough for me to read. "You can't prove anything," she hissed. "You never could." She turned back to the crowd, ready to pivot into a joke, ready to reclaim the adoration she felt entitled to. She never saw him coming. Cole moved across the dance floor with a speed that was terrifying. He didn't run. He didn't stomp. He just covered the distance in long, fluid strides that ate up the space between the bar and the stage. He moved like water, like smoke, like something that could not be stopped. He stepped onto the low stage. Delaney turned, her smile faltering as she saw him. "Cole? Honey, what are you—" He didn't hesitate. He slapped her. It wasn't a theatrical, movie-style backhand. It wasn't a wild swing. It was a sharp, disciplined strike to her cheek. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent tent. It was the sound of authority. It was the sound of a correction. Delaney stumbled back, her hand flying to her face, her eyes wide with genuine shock. The microphone dropped from her hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud that vibrated through the speakers. The room did not gasp. The room stopped breathing. Cole did not look at the guests. He did not look at his team. He looked only at Delaney. He stood over her, his chest heaving slightly, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. "Stop lying," he said. His voice was not a shout. It was low, guttural, a vibration that you felt in your bones rather than heard with your ears. It was the voice of a man who issued commands that determined life and death. "You have been stealing from her," he said, pointing a steady finger at me across the room. "You have been stealing from your own sister for years." Delaney stared at him, her mouth opening and closing, her perfect face crumbling. The mask slipped. For 1 second, I saw the real Delaney, the scared, vicious child who broke things and blamed everyone else. "Cole," she whimpered, reaching for him. "Baby, please." He stepped back, revulsion plain on his face. "And tonight," he said, his voice rising just enough to sound like a verdict. "It ends." Delaney's face contorted. The shock vanished, replaced instantly by a flash of pure, ugly rage. Then, just as quickly, she remembered the audience, her eyes filled with tears on command. She crumpled toward the floor, catching herself on the edge of the head table, turning her bruised cheek toward the cameras, toward the guests, toward the world. She was already rewriting the scene. She was already becoming the victim. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at the floor. I was looking at Cole. And I realized with a jolt of electricity that for the first time in 34 years, someone had actually seen me. The silence in the tent lasted exactly 4 seconds. That was the time it took for the shock to register, for the collective breath to be held, and for the reality of violence to settle into the humid Charleston air. Then came the screens. It started with a few flashes, then a ripple, and finally a wave. 300 smartphones rose in unison, glowing like fireflies in the dim light. They weren't calling for help. They were recording. I watched with a detached, sickening fascination as the guests, people who had eaten the crab cakes and drunk the champagne, turned into amateur documentarians. They weren't looking at Delaney or Cole or me. They were looking at their screens, framing the shot, ensuring the lighting captured the red mark blooming on the bride's cheek. By the time I made it to the parking lot, trembling and unable to find my keys, the first clips were already live. I sat in my sedan, the engine cold, and watched my life disintegrate in real time on a 5-inch screen. The video was captioned, "Groom snaps at wedding. Toxic sister ruined everything." It had 12,000 views in 10 minutes. Delaney did not hide. She did not retreat to a bridal suite to weep in private. She went straight to the camera. Before the police even arrived, if anyone had even called them, she was spinning the narrative. A video surfaced on her story an hour later. She was sitting in the back of a town car, her mascara artfully smeared, her voice trembling but clear. "He didn't mean it," she whispered, looking directly into the lens. "Cole is a good man. He's under so much pressure. It is Brooke. She has been in his ear for weeks, telling him lies, manipulating him. She has always been jealous of me. She wanted to ruin my day, and she used him to do it." I stared at the phone. It was a masterclass in deflection. She had taken the man who assaulted her and turned him into a victim of my sorcery, absolving him just enough to keep him as a prize while painting me as the villain. I turned off my phone. I drove home in silence, the road blurring ahead of me. I woke up on Sunday morning to a digital execution. My inbox was full. My direct messages were overflowing. My LinkedIn profile, my professional sanctuary, was under siege. Strangers from Kansas and London and places I could not identify were writing to tell me I was a monster, homewrecker, liar. You are just a jealous spinster who couldn't stand seeing her sister happy. I hope you rot. They analyzed my face in the background of the videos. They dissected my cold reaction. They called my lack of tears proof of sociopathy. They didn't know I wasn't crying because I was in shock. They didn't know I wasn't crying because I had spent 20 years crying over Delaney Bryant, and I had simply run dry. Then came the email that actually hurt. It was time-stamped at 7:30 in the morning. It was from the managing partner at Halcyon Integrity Partners, Brooke. It read, "In light of the viral nature of the incident last night and the serious allegations circulating regarding personal conduct, we are placing you on administrative leave effective immediately. Our clients value discretion above all else. Until this situation is clarified and the noise dies down, we cannot have you associated with active casework. Access to the server has been suspended." I sat on the edge of my bed, the room spinning. They had cut me off. My job was not just my income, it was my identity. It was the one place where truth mattered more than tears. Now, because Delaney had cried on camera, my integrity was being liquidated. I needed to see my father. He was the only reality that made sense. I dressed in 20 minutes, pulling on a baseball cap and sunglasses to avoid recognition, although I doubted anyone in the real world cared as much as the internet did. I drove to the assisted living facility, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I needed to hold his hand. I needed to look at the man I had supported for 2 years and remind myself why I endured this. I walked into the lobby of the Pines at Ashley River. The smell of antiseptic and stale coffee hit me, usually a comfort, but today it felt suffocating. "Hi, Sarah," I said to the receptionist. I knew her. I had brought her cupcakes for her birthday last month. "I am just here to see Ray." Sarah didn't smile. She didn't reach for the visitor badge. She looked down at her computer screen, her face flushing a deep, uncomfortable red. "I am so sorry, Ms. Bryant," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't let you up." I froze. "What? Is he sick? Is it a quarantine?" "No," she said, refusing to meet my eyes. "The visitor list was updated early this morning. You have been removed." The world tilted on its axis. Removed? By whom? I am his daughter. I pay the bills here. Sarah, you know I do. You process the checks. "I know," she said, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I know you do. Brooke, but the power of attorney holder faxed over a strict directive. No unapproved visitors. You are specifically listed as not approved. If I let you up, I lose my job. The administrator was very clear. Delaney. She wasn't just spinning a story. She was severing my lifelines. She knew the one thing that would break me wasn't public humiliation. It was losing access to him. She was holding a stroke victim hostage to punish me for being slapped by her husband. I walked out of the facility before I started screaming. I sat in my car and screamed until my throat tasted like copper. My phone buzzed. I expected another hate message, another death threat from a teenager in Nebraska. It was a text from a number I didn't save, but I recognized the area code. Secure line. The message read, "Do not reply. I am safe. I am staying at the base. She is lying about everything. I am documenting the timeline. Stay quiet. Do not engage with the media. I will fix this. C. Cole." The text was short, urgent, and oddly formal, like he was reporting from behind enemy lines. He sounded like a man under observation. He wasn't apologizing for the slap, which was complicated, but he was aligning himself with me. He was confirming what I suspected. This was a war, and he was gathering ammunition. I drove to Kara Whitlock's house. Kara has been my friend since law school, a sharp-edged litigator who eats bullies for breakfast. She opened the door before I even knocked, pulled me inside, and shoved a mug of black coffee into my hand. "Do not look at the internet," she ordered, leading me to her kitchen island, which was covered in legal pads. "I already did," I said, my voice sounding hollow. "I lost my job. Kara. And she cut me off from Dad. I can't see him." Kara stopped moving. She turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. "She cut access? After a wedding reception brawl?" "She used the power of attorney," I said. "She updated the list this morning." Kara slammed her hand down on the counter. "Okay, that is it. This stopped being a messy family drama 10 minutes ago. This is now elder financial abuse and isolation. She is using a vulnerable adult as a pawn to retaliate against a whistleblower." "I am not a whistleblower," I said weakly. "I am just her sister." "No," Kara said, pulling a fresh legal pad toward her. "You are the financier of the victim's care, and she is the fiduciary who is misappropriating funds and restricting access to the payer. Brooke, listen to me. She made a mistake, a massive one. She thinks this is a PR battle. She thinks if she gets enough likes on TikTok, she wins. But she just walked into a legal minefield." She turned her laptop around to face me. "Look at this." It was Delaney's latest post, uploaded 20 minutes ago. She was wearing a soft, oversized sweater, clutching a mug of tea. The bruise on her cheek was visible, purple and angry, but looking closely, the edges seemed too defined, the color too fresh for a 12-hour-old injury. "I didn't deserve this," Delaney sobbed in the video. "I just wanted a perfect day, and now I don't even know if I can afford my dad's medical bills because of the stress. I might have to move him. Please, if anyone can help, donate to the link in my bio." I stared at the screen. "She is fundraising," I whispered. "She is fundraising off the assault." "She is fundraising for bills you have already paid," Kara corrected, her voice cold as steel. "She is soliciting donations for a manufactured crisis. That is fraud. Brooke, wire fraud." I looked at the woman on the screen. My sister. The girl I had protected from thunderstorms and bullies and her own bad grades. I saw the tears that had fooled everyone for 3 decades. But this time, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I didn't feel the guilt. I felt the cold, hard click of a lock sliding into place. "Get the paperwork," I told Kara. "We are not doing a press release. We are filing an injunction." The worst part wasn't the millions of strangers hating me. It wasn't the loss of my career. It was the realization that Delaney was willing to let our father suffer, willing to move him, willing to uproot a confused, sick old man just to keep her narrative alive. She had taken the one thing I loved, and for that, I would take the one thing she loved. I would take her audience. The diner was called the Midway, a relic of the 1950s sitting on a stretch of highway that felt like the edge of the world. It was the kind of place where truck drivers stopped for coffee at 3 in the morning and nobody asked why you were wearing sunglasses indoors. I parked my car in the shadows around the back, checking my mirrors 3 times before I killed the engine. Paranoia was a new sensation for me. But after 24 hours of being hunted by the internet, it felt like a necessary survival skill. I walked inside. The air smelled of burnt grease and industrial cleaner. Cole was in the last booth, his back pressed firmly against the wall. It was a tactical position. He had a clear view of the entrance, the kitchen door, and the windows. He wasn't wearing his dress whites anymore. He was in a dark hoodie and jeans, looking less like a groom and more like a fugitive. His hands were wrapped around a mug of black coffee, but he wasn't drinking it. He was watching the door. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He just nodded once, a sharp, efficient movement that told me the perimeter was secure. I slid into the booth opposite him. I felt exposed. "You look like hell," he said quietly. "I have been trending on Twitter for 12 hours as a villain," I replied, keeping my voice low. "It takes a toll on the complexion. Why are we here, Cole? And why did you text me like you are in a spy movie?" He looked down at his coffee. The muscles in his jaw were working, grinding against a tension I couldn't see. "Because I need to know if you are part of it," he said. I frowned. "Part of what? The wedding? You were there. I was the prop in the corner." "No," he said, his eyes snapping up to meet mine. They were exhausted, rimmed with red, but intense. "The steel, the long con. I need to know if you were the architect or just another casualty." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "I recover stolen assets for a living. Cole, I don't steal them. Now tell me what is going on. You assaulted my sister in front of 300 people. You destroyed your own wedding. Why?" He took a breath, holding it for a second before exhaling. "I didn't plan to hit her. I planned to wait. I planned to get the files from her laptop while everyone was drunk at the after-party. But when she stood there on that stage, when she mocked you for being lonely, when she used your father's illness as a weapon." He shook his head. "It triggered something. It was the same tone, the exact same arrogance I heard 3 years ago." 3 years ago? We didn't know you 3 years ago." "You didn't," he said. "But my brother did." I went still. "You have a brother?" "Had," Cole corrected. "Liam, he was a Marine. He came home with a traumatic brain injury and a lot of hope. He got involved with a charity that promised to help veterans navigate their benefits and invest their pension lump sums. He trusted them. They had a great website. They had testimonials. They had a beautiful, charming spokeswoman who told him she understood his pain." My stomach dropped. I knew where this was going. "He lost everything," Cole said, his voice void of emotion, which made it terrifying. $50,000, his disability back pay, all of it funneled into administrative fees and consulting costs. When he tried to get answers, they ghosted him. He spiraled. He felt stupid. He felt like he had failed his family. 2 years ago, he took his own life." I reached across the table, my hand hovering, but I didn't touch him. "Cole, I am so sorry." "I went through his papers after the funeral," he continued, ignoring my sympathy. "I found the trail. It was a mess of shell companies and fake nonprofits. But there was one name that kept popping up in the correspondence logs. A witness. Someone the investigators tried to contact to verify the financial structure, but they were always blocked. The note said the witness was hostile or unavailable due to medical crisis." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the sticky table. I unfolded it. It was a photocopy of a case file from a private investigator. Highlighted in neon yellow was a line. Subject B, Bryant, unreachable. Sister acts as proxy, claims B, Bryant is mentally unstable and refuses deposition. "B. Bryant," I whispered. "That is me." "I thought you were in on it," Cole said. "I thought you were the silent partner." The number cruncher. That is why I tracked Delaney down. That is why I dated her. That is why I proposed. I wanted to get inside the house. I wanted to find the money. I never met your brother, I said, my voice shaking. I never knew about any investigation. If someone called for me, I never got the message. I know, Cole said. I watched you last night. I watched you at the rehearsal dinner. You aren't a co-conspirator. Brooke, you are the scapegoat. She has been using your identity to insulate herself. She tells people you are the one handling the finances, and then she tells you that she is protecting you from the stress. He pulled out another photo. This one was glossy, high resolution. It showed Delaney standing at a podium, looking somber and patriotic, handing a giant novelty check to a group of men in wheelchairs. The check was made out for $10,000. Look at the sponsor logo, Cole said. I squinted at the bottom corner of the check. Vanguard Relief Fund. Now look at the address, he said. I read the small print. 1402 Palmetto Drive. Suite B. I stopped breathing. That is the same address as the wedding planner. Verity Planning Group. It is not a suite, Cole said. It is a mailbox at a shipping center behind a gas station. I drove past it this morning. There is no office. There is no staff. It is just a drop box where money goes to die. My mind was racing, connecting dots I hadn't even known existed. The vendor list at the wedding, the strange emergency money she needed last year, the way she handled Dad's accounts. It wasn't just that she was spending too much. It was that she was cycling money through legitimate-looking fronts to clean it. She is laundering it, I said, the forensic accountant in me taking over. She takes donations for veterans or sick kids, funnels them into these shell LLCs for services like event planning or consulting, and then pays herself a salary. And she used my name as a shield, so if anyone looked too close, the trail would lead to the mentally unstable sister who handles the books. Exactly, Cole said. She rushed the wedding because she needed a new shield. She needed a Navy SEAL husband. It makes her untouchable. Who questions the wife of a decorated commander? It gave her access to my network, my friends, deeper pockets. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. When she stood on that stage and said you were obsessed with money and that you can't prove anything, I realized she wasn't just bullying you. She was taunting the entire system. She was bragging that she had buried the truth so deep nobody would ever find it. That is why I hit her. I wasn't slapping my wife. I was slapping the woman who killed my brother. I sat back, the vinyl booth squeaking beneath me. The waitress came by and refilled our coffees, oblivious to the fact that we were dissecting a crime. I am not doing revenge, I said finally. The words felt heavy in my mouth. I don't care about humiliating her. I don't care about the internet. I just want my father back. She has him. Cole, she is using him as leverage. I know, Cole said. And we are going to get him back. I am doing truth, I said firmly. I want the paper trail. I want the bank records. I want to show a judge exactly where every single cent went. I want to dismantle her life with the same precision she used to dismantle mine. But I am doing it the right way. No more violence. Cole looked at me, for the first time. The tension in his shoulders dropped. Just a fraction. He looked less like a soldier and more like a man who had finally found an ally. Truth is exactly what I came for, he said. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a small silver flash drive. He placed it on the table between us. What is that? I asked. While she was busy posting her crying video this morning, Cole said. I was busy mirroring her hard drive. I haven't decrypted it yet. I need a forensic accountant for that. He slid the drive toward me. She is sitting on the truth. Brooke, he said. And we are going to dig it out. I picked up the drive. It was cold metal, but it felt like a burning coal in my palm. This was it. This was the receipt. Let's go to work, I said. I pulled my car into the driveway of the house I grew up in, and the silence that greeted me felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing against the siding. My childhood home is a sprawling colonial in a quiet cul-de-sac. The kind of place where lawns are manicured to within an inch of their lives and neighbors only wave from a safe distance. Today, the blinds were drawn tight, sealing the house like a tomb against the prying eyes of the neighborhood. I used my key to let myself in. The air inside smelled of lemon polish and aggressive denial. My mother, Judith, was in the kitchen. She was scrubbing the granite island with a ferocity that suggested she was trying to erase the last 24 hours from existence. When she saw me, she didn't hug me. She didn't ask if I was okay after being publicly humiliated and fired. She just tightened her grip on the sponge. "Brooke," she said, her voice breathless and high. "I did not think you would come over. Delaney is upstairs resting. She is devastated, simply devastated. We are not having visitors." "I am not a visitor, Mom," I said, walking past her toward the hallway. "I am your daughter, and I am here for Dad's files." "His files?" Judith fluttered after me, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What files?" "Delaney handles all the paperwork now. You know that. She is so good with the details. She takes care of everything so I don't have to worry." That was Judith Bryant in a nutshell. She wasn't evil. She was just terrified. She had spent 40 years avoiding conflict, smoothing over rough edges, and pretending that if she didn't look at a problem, it would cease to exist. Delaney had learned early on that she could get away with murder as long as she told Mom it was just a game. I ignored her and pushed open the door to Dad's study. It was a room that used to smell of pipe tobacco and old paper. Now, it smelled of nothing. The mahogany desk, once cluttered with invoices and legal pads, was terrifyingly bare. The surface gleamed under the afternoon sun filtering through the slats. I opened the top drawer, empty. I opened the middle drawer, empty. I went to the filing cabinet in the corner where Dad kept 40 years of tax returns and insurance policies. I pulled the handle. It slid open with a hollow rattle. The hanging folders were there, but the guts were gone. The medical billing statements, the facility contracts, the bank ledgers. All of it had been purged. "Where are they, Mom?" I asked, turning to face her. She hovered in the doorway, wringing the towel. "Delaney said she needed to organize them. She said the system was archaic. She took them to her home office to digitize them." "Digitize them," I repeated flatly. "Delaney does not know how to convert a PDF, let alone digitize 4 decades of financial records." I looked back at the desk. There was one drawer I hadn't checked, the deep bottom drawer on the right side. It was locked. "Where's the key to this?" I asked. "Oh, we don't go in there," Mom said quickly, her eyes darting away. "Delaney said she keeps sensitive legal things in there. She said I shouldn't touch it or I might mess up the filing system for Dad's care." "Give me the letter opener," I said. "Brooke, you can't—" I didn't wait. I grabbed the heavy brass letter opener from the pencil cup on top of the desk. I jammed the tip into the lock mechanism and twisted. It wasn't a high-security safe. It was a wooden desk from 1990. The wood splintered with a sharp crack, and the lock gave way. Mom gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. "Brooke, that is destruction of property." "No," I said, pulling the drawer open. "This is discovery." The drawer wasn't organized. It was a chaotic nest of papers, crammed in haphazardly. I reached in and pulled out a thick stack of documents clipped together. The top page was a power of attorney form. I scanned the date. It was signed November 14th, 2 years ago. I froze. November 14th was 3 days after Dad's stroke. He had been in the ICU, unable to speak, unable to recognize me, barely able to open his eyes. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Raymond Bryant. The signature was smooth. It was steady. It had a flourish on the R that my father used when he was a healthy man in his 40s. But on November 14th, my father's hands were curled into claws from spasticity. He couldn't hold a spoon, let alone a pen. "She forged it," I whispered. The room seemed to tilt. "She forged his signature while he was in a coma. Mom, did you know about this?" "She said he wanted her to handle it," Mom cried, her voice rising to a panic. "She said he told her before the stroke." She was just making it official so we could pay the hospital bills. He didn't tell her anything, I said, flipping the page. And she didn't use it to pay the hospital bills. I paid the hospital bills. I dug deeper into the pile. Under the POA forms, there was a credit card statement. It was from a bank I didn't use. I looked at the account holder's name, Brooke Bryant. I felt the blood drain from my face. I opened the statement. The credit limit was $50,000. The balance was $48,000. The charges were a roadmap of Delaney's lifestyle. Delta Airlines, Sephora, the Charleston Place Hotel, Verity Planning Group, Verity Planning Group, Verity Planning Group. She opened a credit line in my name, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. Because I have clean records. Because she trashed her own credit score years ago, so she stole mine. She said she was helping you build points, Mom stammered, shrinking against the door frame. She said you guys were sharing expenses. I didn't answer. I reached to the very back of the drawer, my fingers brushing against something tucked behind the hanging rails. It was a small, spiral-bound notebook. It looked like one of the speech therapy journals the hospital gave Dad to practice his handwriting. I pulled it out. The pages were filled with jagged, frustrated lines where he had tried to form letters and failed, but on the last page, the ink was pressed down hard, the paper nearly torn from the pressure. The letters were shaky, capitalized, and desperate. Brooke, check the foundation. I stared at the words. He knew. Trapped in his body. Unable to speak. Doped up on whatever meds Delaney authorized. He had seen something. He had tried to warn me. The foundation, I murmured. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were trembling, but I forced them to be steady. I typed in the Delaney Bryant Veterans Initiative. It was the passion project she talked about constantly, the charity she claimed was her full-time job. The website was slick, stock photos of smiling soldiers, a mission statement about empowering heroes. I scrolled down to the bottom and found the link for their tax filings. Nonprofits have to make their Form 990S public. I opened the most recent filing. Revenue, $250,000. Expenses, $210,000. I looked at the expense breakdown. Management fees, consultant retainers, event coordination. I looked at the addresses for the recipients of these fees. 1402 Palmetto Drive, 4500 Rivers Avenue, Suite 10, 88 King Street, Unit 4. I switched tabs and searched the addresses. Palmetto Drive was the Dropbox Cole had found. Rivers Avenue was a UPS store. King Street was a virtual office rental service. She is washing it, I said out loud. She takes the donations, pays these shell companies for services that don't exist, and the money circles right back to her. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from a number I didn't have saved, but the preview message stopped my heart. It is Maria, the night nurse at the Pines. I shouldn't be texting you, but I am scared. The transport van is scheduled for tomorrow morning. The order came through an hour ago. She is moving him to a facility in Walterboro. It is a state-subsidized home. Brooke, it is not a good place. The order says it is for financial hardship reasons. I dropped the phone on the desk. Walterboro was 2 hours away. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. If she moved him there, he would decline within weeks. He would be isolated, medicated, and silenced. I looked at the forged power of attorney. I looked at the credit card statement with my name on it. I looked at the shaky handwriting of a man who was begging his daughter to save him. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just about money. Delaney didn't just want the cash. She needed to control the narrative. As long as Dad was at the Pines, getting good therapy, there was a chance he might recover enough to talk. There was a chance he might remember who signed what. Moving him to a cheaper, worse facility wasn't about saving money. It was about burying the witness. I looked at my mother, who was now crying softly into her dish towel, terrified that the illusion of her perfect family was shattering. She isn't protecting him, Mom, I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. I grabbed the stack of papers, the notebook, and the credit card statement. She is erasing him. I walked past her, out of the study, and down the hall. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't offer comfort. I walked out to my car with the evidence of 3 felonies in my hand, and I realized that the sister I had tried to protect for 30 years was dead to me. There was only a criminal left, and I was the prosecutor. Monday morning broke with the kind of aggressive sunshine that usually signals a hangover. But for me, it signaled the start of a war. I was not at Halcyon Integrity Partners. I was sitting in the conference room of Kara Whitlock's firm, surrounded by mahogany wainscoting and the smell of expensive toner. Kara did not waste time with pleasantries. At 9 o'clock sharp, she filed an emergency ex parte petition for temporary guardianship and a motion for injunctive relief. In plain English, we were asking a judge to immediately strip Delaney of her power over our father and freeze every bank account associated with her name, her foundation, and my father's estate. It was a nuclear strike disguised as a stack of paperwork. "We are not arguing that she is a bad sister," Kara said, sliding a copy of the filing across the table to me. "We are arguing that she is an immediate financial danger to a vulnerable adult. The standard of proof is lower for the freeze, but we need to be rock solid for the guardianship." Cole sat at the other end of the table. He looked tired. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled low, and he kept checking his phone, likely monitoring the security cameras he had quietly installed inside his own home over the weekend. "We have the chain," I said, opening my laptop. I spent the last 12 hours mapping the flow of funds from the flash drive Cole mirrored. I projected the spreadsheet onto the wall. It was a grid of dates and dollar amounts, a digital map of Delaney's greed. "Look at this," I said, using a laser pointer to circle a cluster of transactions. On January 12th, the Delaney Bryant Veterans Initiative received a donation of $40,000 from a local construction firm. On January 14th, 2 days later, a wire transfer of $38,000 went to Verity Planning Group for strategic consulting. On January 15th, Verity Planning Group paid a $35,000 deposit to Southern Pallet Catering. "The wedding caterer," Cole said, his voice flat. "Exactly," I said. "She didn't even try to hide it. She just washed it through one layer. It is classic layering. But she got lazy. The amounts are too similar. Legitimate businesses have overhead, taxes, operating costs. Shell companies pass through 90% of the funds within 48 hours. I clicked to the next slide. Here's another one. February 1st. A $20,000 grant comes in for PTSD rehabilitation. February 3rd. $18,000 goes to an LLC called Lux Event Designs. February 4th. A check for exactly $18,000 is cut to the florist. Kara whistled low. That is not just mismanagement. That is embezzlement. And because she used the mail and wire transfers, it is federal wire fraud. "I have the witnesses for the intake," Cole added. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "I tracked down 3 of the guys who were at the casino night fundraiser last month. They said the buy-ins were cash only. $500 a head for a seat at the poker table. No receipts were issued. Delaney collected the cash in a lockbox." "Cash is harder to trace," I noted, frowning. "She could claim she donated it." "She didn't," Cole said. "I checked the deposit slips on the drive. The cash deposits into the foundation account for that week were 0, but the cash deposits into her personal checking account? $7,000. "Okay," Kara said, typing furiously. "So we have commingling of funds, we have conversion of charitable assets for personal use, and we have the direct link to the wedding expenses. This is good. It is clean. We don't need to talk about the slap. We don't need to talk about her personality. We just follow the money." Just then, the receptionist knocked on the door. She looked nervous. "Ms. Whitlock? A courier just dropped this off. He said it was urgent." She handed Kara a thick cream-colored envelope. Kara opened it, scanned the first page, and let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Well," she lawyered up, Kara said, It is a cease and desist letter from Sterling and Associates. They are a heavy-hitting PR firm with a legal arm. They are threatening to sue you, Brooke, for defamation of character, tortious interference with business relations, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They are claiming you are spreading malicious lies to sabotage her nonprofit work. I felt a spike of adrenaline, but it wasn't fear, it was focus. Let me see it, I said. I read the letter. It was aggressive. It demanded I retract all statements, turn over any stolen data, meaning the drive Cole took, and sign a non-disclosure agreement within 24 hours, or they would seek damages in the millions. She is trying to scare us, Cole said. She thinks if she yells loud enough, we will back down. She is used to you backing down, Brooke, Kara said, looking at me over her glasses. Are you going to? I looked at the spreadsheet on the wall. I looked at the line item for my father's facility, the one she had stopped paying. No, I said. We are going to pivot. Kara, draft preservation letters. Send them to every single vendor on that wedding list. The florist, the caterer, the band, the dressmaker. Send one to the venue. Send one to the bank. Preservation letters? Cole asked. It is a legal warning, I explained. It tells them that litigation is pending and that they have a legal duty to preserve all records, emails, invoices, and communications related to Delaney Bryant, the foundation, and the wedding. If they delete anything after receiving this letter, it becomes a crime called spoliation of evidence. It also scares the hell out of legitimate businesses. They won't want to protect her if it means they might get dragged into a fraud investigation. Kara smirked. I love it when you talk procedural. I will have them out by noon. Cole stood up. I need to get back to the house. She is manic today. She is shredding things. I saw her with a trash bag in the office this morning. Be careful, I told him. Don't let her know you are the source. If she finds out you mirrored the drive, she might try to claim you hacked her. She won't find out, Cole said grimly. We are sleeping in separate rooms. I told her I needed space to process the trauma of the wedding. She bought it. She thinks she can win me back if she plays the victim hard enough. I am just there to make sure she doesn't burn the house down before the police get there. He left, slipping out the back exit like the operative he was. I spent the next 3 hours with Kara, organizing the exhibits for the judge. We needed a smoking gun that tied me directly to the fraud, something that proved she wasn't just stealing from strangers, but that she was setting me up to take the fall. I went back to the flash drive files, digging into a folder labeled Miscellaneous Contracts. Most of it was junk, venue agreements, DJ contracts, and then I saw a file name that made me pause. Consulting_agreement_BB_2024.pdfbb, Brooke Bryant. I clicked it open. It was a standard independent contractor agreement between the Delaney Bryant Veterans Initiative and Brooke Bryant Financial Services. I read the terms. It stated that I was being paid a monthly retainer of $5,000 for financial oversight and auditing services. It was dated 2 years ago. I scrolled to the bottom. There was my signature. It was a good forgery. Better than the one on Dad's power of attorney. She had clearly practiced this one. She had traced it from one of the birthday cards I had given her. But then I looked at the date next to the signature, February 29th, 2023. I stared at it. Kara, I said softly. What? She looked up from her laptop. Come here. Look at this date. She walked over and peered at the screen. February 29th, 2023. Okay, so? Kara, I said, a smile slowly spreading across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who just watched the prey step directly into the trap. 2023 wasn't a leap year. Kara froze. She looked at the screen again. She pulled out her phone and checked the calendar. February 2023 ended on the 28th, she whispered. There was no February 29th. She forged a contract to explain where the money was going, I said. The pieces locking together with a satisfying click. She created a fake paper trail to show that she was paying me. likely to frame me as the beneficiary of the stolen funds. She wanted to be able to say, "I didn't steal it. My accountant's sister took it as fees." But she was so arrogant, so sloppy, that she dated the forgery on a day that does not exist. Kara started laughing. It was a sharp, victorious sound. "Oh, that is beautiful. That is admissible. That proves intent to defraud and identity theft in one document. It proves something else, too," I said, leaning back in my chair. "What?" "It proves this isn't a family dispute," I said. "If she forged my signature on a contract, she crossed the line from civil liability to criminal conduct. We don't just have a guardianship case anymore, Kara. We have a felony." I looked at the document one last time. For years, Delaney had used my name to clean up her messes. She had used my credit, my reputation, my silence. She thought she could use my identity to hide her crimes, but she had made one fatal error. She forgot that I checked the dates. "File it," I said. "Let's go see the judge." Tuesday brought a new kind of warfare. I had expected legal maneuvering, perhaps a quiet settlement offer. Instead, Delaney went nuclear. I woke up to a notification from a friend who still followed Delaney's private account. She had posted a new video, a confessional, filmed in the soft. Forgiving light of her bedroom, she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked fragile, her voice a carefully calibrated whisper. "I didn't want to say this," she told the camera, wiping away a tear that didn't seem to have a source. "But I have to protect my husband, my sister. She has been unwell for a long time. She is obsessed, and not just with me. She has been secretly in love with Cole since the day I introduced them. That is why she ruined the wedding. She couldn't stand seeing us happy." Then came the edit. She had taken footage from the wedding, likely from the raw files the videographer had sent over, and spliced it together. There was a clip of Cole looking at me across the room. The moment he had recognized me as the hostile witness from his brother's case, but Delaney had slowed it down, added a soft, melancholic piano track, and zoomed in on my face as I looked back, in slow motion. My confusion looked like longing. His intensity looked like passion. The caption read, "When your own sister wants your life, betrayal, mental health awareness." The comments were a cesspool. "She looks psychotic. Oh my God. Look at how she stares at him. No wonder he slapped her. She probably tried to kiss him." I threw my phone across the duvet. It hit the wall with a satisfying thud. "I am going to upload the bank statements," I told Kara an hour later, pacing the length of her conference room. "I am going to post the forged contract. I am going to show the world she's a thief before she convinces them I am a stalker." Kara didn't look up from her laptop. "Sit down, Brooke." "I can't sit down. She is destroying my reputation in real time." "And if you post that evidence now," Kara said, finally meeting my eyes, "you look like a bitter woman trying to justify herself in the court of public opinion. You look messy. Judges hate messy. Court beats chaos. Brooke, timing beats outrage. Let her spin her stories. When we walk into that hearing on Thursday, we won't have stories. We will have felonies." My phone rang again. It wasn't a social media notification. It was the internal security officer at Halcyon Integrity Partners. "Brooke," he said. His voice clipped. "We received an anonymous whistleblower complaint this morning. It alleges you have been downloading client financial data onto personal drives for the purpose of identity theft." My blood ran cold. "That is a lie. You know my logs. I have never taken a file off-site." "The complaint included a screenshot of a file directory," he said. "It looks real. We have to initiate a full forensic audit of your hardware. Until it is cleared, your clearance is revoked. Do not log in. Do not contact clients." I hung up, my hands shaking. She wasn't just painting me as a jealous sister anymore. She was trying to make me unemployable. She knew that in my industry, even the whisper of data theft was a death sentence. "Send me the email header." I texted the security officer. "If it is anonymous, you have the routing data. Just send it to me. I need to clear my name." He hesitated, then forwarded the raw data file. I didn't need a forensic team to read it. I scanned the IP address of the sender, 192.168. It traced back to a residential Comcast node in Charleston. I recognized the submask. It was the static IP assigned to the wireless printer in my parents' house, the same network Delaney used for her office. She filed the complaint from her living room, I said to Kara, showing her the screen. She is trying to frame me for data theft using the Wi-Fi I pay for. Kara added it to the pile. Exhibit G, retaliatory fabrication of evidence. But Delaney wasn't done. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, while Kara was drafting a subpoena for the wedding planner, Cole's name flashed on my screen. She is moving him. Now. I stared at the text. Now? We had a hearing in 48 hours. She called a private medical transport. Cole texted, "They are in the driveway." She told Mom it is an emergency transfer because of threats to his safety. She is trying to hide the body, Kara said, standing up so fast her chair tipped over. If she moves him across county lines or into a private facility where she controls the gate, we can't get an independent medical evaluation before the hearing. Cole is there, I said. He is the only one who can stop it. I called Cole. He picked up on the first ring. I am in the hallway, he whispered. The paramedics are in the room. She is screaming at them to hurry up. Put her on speaker, I said. No, record her. Do not let them take him. I heard the rustle of fabric, and then Delaney's voice came through, shrill and panicked. I am the power of attorney, she screamed. I said load him up. We have to go. Ma'am, his vitals are stable. A male voice, presumably a paramedic, said calmly, We can't move a patient against their will if there is no medical necessity. He seems distressed. He doesn't know what he wants, Delaney yelled. He has dementia. He can't even talk. He doesn't get a vote. The line went dead silent. He doesn't get a vote, Cole repeated, his voice close to the microphone. You just said that in front of 3 witnesses. Delaney? Get out of my way, Cole, she shrieked. You are helping her. You are trying to kill him. I am trying to stop you from kidnapping him, Cole said, his voice dropping to that terrifyingly calm register. I am the husband of the power of attorney holder, and I am revoking consent for transport on the grounds of patient safety. If you touch him, I will call the police and file a report for elder endangerment right now. There was a pause, heavy and suffocating, then the sound of heavy boots walking away. We are leaving, the paramedic said. Call us when you have the paperwork sorted, ma'am. Cole came back on the line. They are gone. She is locking herself in the bedroom. I am sitting by Ray's bed. He is scared. Brooke, he is crying. Stay there, I said, tears pricking my own eyes. Do not leave that room until the court order comes through. I hung up, exhausted. Every hour was a battle. I walked out of Kara's office to get some air. Needing to escape the suffocating smell of legal strategy, I was standing in the parking garage, leaning against a concrete pillar, when a car pulled up slowly next to me. It was a silver Lexus. The window rolled down. It was Harper Lane. Delaney's maid of honor, the girl who had held Delaney's train, laughed at her jokes and sneered at me during the toast. She looked terrified. She was wearing sunglasses, and her hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. Brooke, she hissed. I straightened up. What do you want? Harper? Here to deliver another lawsuit? No, she said. She looked around the empty garage. I got a letter, a preservation letter from your lawyer. It said if I delete anything, I could go to jail. That is true, I said. So don't delete anything. I can't, she whispered. Delaney, she called me an hour ago. She told me to wipe our group chat. She said to delete the thread from last month where we talked about the wedding budget. Harper reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking. I am not going to jail for her, Harper said, her voice cracking. I thought she was just, exaggerating. I didn't know she was stealing from your dad. My grandmother has Alzheimer's. I can't be part of that. She unlocked the phone and handed it to me. I screenshotted everything before I left the house, she said. just in case. I took the phone. It was open to a text chain labeled Team Bride. I scrolled back to January. Delaney. Ugh, the venue wants another $10,000. I am going to have to pull it from the foundation again. Just remind me to write up a fake invoice for consulting so it looks legit. Harper. Is that safe? Delaney. LOL, who is going to check? My dad is a vegetable and Brooke is too busy being a loser to notice. I just need to make sure the dates line up. If Brooke ever asks, we just say she is crazy. I scrolled down to yesterday, right after the wedding. Delaney. We need to pivot. Brooke is going to dig. I need to move Dad to that place in Walterboro. If he is isolated, no one can prove he didn't sign those checks. We have to control the story. Harper. We have to make her look like the villain before she opens her mouth. I looked up at Harper. She was crying. She doesn't care about the money, I said, realizing the true shape of the monster I was fighting. She has spent $200,000. But that isn't the point. It is the story. She needs to be the hero. She needs to be the victim. She will burn the whole world down just to make sure she isn't the villain. Take the pictures, Harper said, wiping her eyes. Airdrop them to yourself. I don't want to know. I just want out. I transferred the files. The little blue circle completed the download. I had the bank records. I had the forged contract. I had the recording of her screaming that our father didn't get a vote. And now, I had her confession in black and white text. Delaney wanted a story? Fine. I was going to give her an ending she never saw coming. The mediation room was a study in beige neutrality, designed to strip emotion from the most volatile moments of human conflict. The walls were cream, the carpet was tan, and the oval table was a slab of polished oak that felt cold enough to freeze water. I sat on one side with Kara. My mother and Delaney sat on the other. Delaney had dressed for the part. Gone were the designer labels and the sharp, architectural cuts she usually favored. She wore a soft, shapeless cardigan in a pale blue that washed her out, and she had skipped mascara entirely. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, slightly messy bun. She looked fragile. She looked like a woman who had been battered by the world, a victim of a cruel sister and a misunderstanding public. It was a costume, engineered with the same precision as her wedding, designed to elicit sympathy from the mediator, a retired judge with kind eyes and a low tolerance for drama. We are here to find a family resolution, the mediator said, folding his hands. Litigation is expensive and public. Nobody wants that, Delaney sniffled. She reached for a tissue, dabbing at dry eyes. I just want my family back, she whispered. Her voice was thin, trembling. I want my dad to have peace. I want my sister to stop hating me. She slid a piece of paper across the table. This is my offer, she said. I will issue a public apology. I will say that I misunderstood the financial protocols. I will say that Brooke is a good sister who was just worried. I will take the heat online. All I ask is that you drop the guardianship petition and unfreeze the foundation account so I can pay the facility bills. Dad needs his care. Brooke, please. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. She was offering me my reputation back in exchange for the keys to the vault. She was betting that my desire to be liked was stronger than my desire for the truth. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at her. No, I said. Delaney blinked, her fragility cracking for a microsecond. What? Brooke, I am offering you everything you want. You want to be vindicated. I will give you that. You are offering me a lie, I said, my voice steady. You are framing this as a misunderstanding. It is not a misunderstanding when you forge a signature. It is not a misunderstanding when you route $40,000 to a shell company. You don't want peace, Delaney. You want control. You want the freeze lifted so you can drain the accounts and run. I am trying to save our father, she cried, her voice rising. He is sick. He needs me. He needs the money you stole, I replied. The door opened. Cole walked in. The air in the room shifted instantly. Delaney sat up straighter, her eyes widening. She hadn't seen him since he stopped the ambulance in the driveway. She reached out a hand across the empty chair between them. her fingers trembling. "Cole," she breathed. "Honey, thank God you are here. Please, tell her. Tell her we just want to go home. Tell her we can fix this." Cole didn't look at her hand. He didn't sit down. He stood at the end of the table, his arms crossed over his chest, looking at her with the detached clinical observation of a coroner examining a body. "I am not here to fix this," Cole said. "I am here to testify regarding the movement of assets." Delaney flinched as if he had struck her. "Testify? Cole, I am your wife. We are a team. I know you are angry about the wedding, but we love each other. We can get past this. Don't let her poison you against me." She looked at him with desperate, wet eyes, pulling every lever of intimacy she had. She was trying to remind him of the vows, the shared bed, the future she had promised him. Cole looked at her, and his expression didn't soften. It hardened. "I didn't marry you because I knew you, Delaney," he said. The words were quiet, but they landed with the weight of stones. "I married you because you curated a lie. You built a character that didn't exist, and you sold her to me. The woman I married doesn't steal from dying men." Delaney recoiled, her mouth opening in a silent gasp. The performance shattered. She looked at our mother, Judith, who was sitting beside her, wringing her hands until the knuckles were white. "Mom," Delaney pleaded, grabbing Judith's arm. Tell them I was just doing what Dad wanted. Tell them I was overwhelmed." Judith looked at me, then at Delaney, then at the table. She looked like a trapped animal. For 30 years, her survival strategy had been to appease Delaney, to smooth the waters, to sacrifice me to keep the peace. But the waters were not smooth anymore. They were boiling. Judith stammered. "I didn't read the papers." "Mom," Delaney hissed. "I didn't," Judith cried out, tears finally spilling over. "She just put them in front of me. She said they were standard forms. She said Dad couldn't handle the stress and I needed to sign for him. I didn't know it was a power of attorney. I didn't know she was taking the money." "You signed them," I said. I wasn't yelling. I felt a strange, cold calm. "You signed them, Mom. You let her take over. You let her isolate him." "She said she was handling it," Judith sobbed. "She said you were too busy with work. She said you didn't care." "Did you ever ask me?" I asked. Judith stopped crying. She looked at me, stunned. "Did you ever once pick up the phone and ask me if I was too busy?" I asked. "Did you ever once check if I was okay? Or did you just believe her because it was easier than dealing with her temper?" The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Judith looked down. She couldn't answer. That was answer enough. Delaney saw her ally crumbling. She saw the walls closing in. She wiped her face, and the fragility vanished. Her eyes went hard, the pupils pinpricks of black obsidian. "Fine," she spat. "You want the truth? You always wanted Dad's respect. You wanted to be the smart one, the capable one. You wanted him to look at you the way he looked at his spreadsheets. I didn't care about respect, Brooke. I just wanted love. I wanted him to look at me and smile. And he did. He loved me more. That is what kills you, isn't it? Even now, brain damaged and broken, he loves me more." It was her final weapon, emotional blackmail. She was trying to drag me back into the sandbox, into the childhood jealousy that had defined us for decades. I looked at her, and I felt nothing. The hook didn't catch. "I don't care who he loves more," I said. "I care who keeps him alive." I turned to the mediator. "I request a closed session," I said. "I want to bring in Mr. Henderson. He is the patient advocate from the Pines." Delaney's lawyer stiffened. "Objection. This is a financial mediation. Medical testimony is irrelevant." "It is relevant to the timeline of consent," Kara countered sharply. "If she claims my client's father authorized these transfers, we need to establish his capacity to authorize anything." The mediator nodded. "Bring him in." Mr. Henderson walked in. He was a small man with a thick file tucked under his arm. He didn't look at Delaney. He sat down and opened the folder. I have reviewed the nursing logs and the neurology consults for Mr. Raymond Bryant, Henderson said. His voice was dry, factual, and devastating. Ms. Bryant, he said, looking at Delaney. You stated in your deposition that your father verbally approved a transfer of $25,000 on December 12th and another transfer of $15,000 on January 4th. He did, Delaney said defiantly. He has good days. He was lucid. Henderson adjusted his glasses. On December 12th, Mr. Bryant was being treated for a severe urinary tract infection that had caused sepsis. He was unresponsive for 48 hours. On January 4th, his medication log shows he was administered a heavy sedative following a seizure. His Glasgow Coma Scale was 9. He could not speak. He could not focus his eyes. He certainly could not authorize a wire transfer. Delaney opened her mouth to argue, but Henderson held up a hand. There is no medical possibility that your father consented to these transactions, he said. The dates you provided align perfectly with his periods of highest impairment. You didn't wait for him to be lucid, Ms. Bryant. You waited for him to be defenseless. The room went absolutely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Delaney looked at the mediator, then at her lawyer, then at Cole. Nobody moved. The victim optics were gone. The soft dress didn't matter. The tears didn't matter. She wasn't the devoted daughter anymore. She was a predator who had been caught picking the bones of the man she claimed to love. We are done here, I said, standing up. See you in court. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of floor wax and desperation. Unlike the mediation room, there was no soft lighting here to hide behind. The fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made Delaney's victim makeup look less like vulnerability and more like a mask that was beginning to crack. I sat next to Kara, my hands folded on the table. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't afraid. I looked at the judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to speak. I was waiting to deliver the verdict. Your Honor, Kara began. Standing up, her voice was calm, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. We are not here to litigate a family squabble. We are here to present a mathematical certainty. She projected the timeline onto the screen. It was the same one I had built, but refined, sharpened into a weapon of undeniable fact. Exhibit A, Kara said. On January 12th, the Respondents Foundation received $40,000 in donations. On January 14th, $38,000 was transferred to a shell company. On January 15th, a deposit of exactly $35,000 was paid to the wedding venue. The judge looked at the screen, then at Delaney. Delaney stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched tight. Exhibit B, Kara continued. This pattern repeats 6 times over 12 months. In total, $210,000 was moved from charitable accounts into personal vendors for Ms. Bryant's wedding and lifestyle expenses. And coincidentally, these transfers align perfectly with the dates Ms. Bryant claimed our father, Mr. Raymond Bryant, authorized the withdrawal of funds for his care. Delaney's attorney, a man who looked like he regretted taking this case on a retainer, stood up. Objection. This is circumstantial. Ms. Bryant has stated that these were loans authorized by her father, which she intended to repay. This is a misunderstanding between sisters. Nothing more. A misunderstanding? Kara asked, raising an eyebrow. Is it a misunderstanding when the respondent attempts to fabricate evidence to frame the petitioner? Kara nodded to the clerk. Exhibit C. Screenshots provided by Ms. Harper Lane, the respondent's maid of honor. The screens changed. The text messages appeared, blown up for everyone to see. Delaney. Just remind me to write up a fake invoice for consulting so it looks legit. Delaney. If Brooke ever asks, we just say she is crazy. Delaney. We have to control the story. Harper. A murmur went through the gallery. Delaney's face turned a shade of gray I had never seen before. She looked at Harper, who was sitting in the back row, head down, refusing to meet her eyes. And finally, Kara said, dropping the bombshell, Exhibit D, the consulting contract dated February 29th, 2023, a date that does not exist, a forgery so blatant it proves not just intent to defraud, but a reckless disregard for reality. The judge picked up the document. She looked at the date. She looked at the signature. She looked at Delaney. Ms. Bryant, the judge said, her voice dropping an octave. Did you draft this document? Delaney stood up. Her hands were gripping the table so hard her knuckles were white. I was trying to protect him. Brooke was stressing him out. I had to take over because she is obsessed with money. She is jealous that Dad loved me more. Sit down, her lawyer hissed, pulling at her arm. No! Delaney yanked her arm away. She turned to me, her eyes wild, the carefully curated facade disintegrating completely. You are nothing without me. Brooke, you are just the boring accountant in the background. I am the one who made this family interesting. I am the one people care about. You are just a wallet. The courtroom went dead silent. The court reporter stopped typing. The judge stared at Delaney. Ms. Bryant, you have just confirmed to this court that you view your family members as financial instruments. That is not a defense. That is a confession. Your Honor, Kara interrupted softly. We have one final piece of evidence. It was recorded yesterday during a care conference at the Pines, authorized by the temporary guardian ad litem. She pressed play on the audio file. The speakers crackled. Then, a voice filled the room. It was weak, slurring slightly, but unmistakably my father's. It wasn't the confused murmuring we had heard for 2 years. It was a moment of clarity, sharp and lucid. Brooke, Ray's voice rasped. Brooke paid. Delaney posed. 4 words, simple, devastating. Delaney let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She slumped back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. The perfect image she had spent her entire life building. The devoted daughter, the glowing bride, the selfless philanthropist, didn't just crack. It evaporated. The judge didn't hesitate. I am granting the permanent guardianship petition effective immediately, she ruled, banging her gavel with a finality that echoed in my chest. I am extending the freeze on all accounts associated with Ms. Delaney Bryant and the Foundation. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for a criminal investigation into elder fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. Delaney looked up, her face streaked with mascara, her eyes hollow. But the wedding photos? My reputation? Your reputation, the judge said coldly, is now a matter for the criminal courts. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, the board of the Delaney Bryant Veterans Initiative resigned en masse. The sponsors she had courted with champagne and lies demanded audits. The local news, which had once run fluff pieces on her charity work, now ran segments on the investigation. The perfect sister was trending again. But this time, the hashtag was fraud. Cole filed for an annulment the next morning. He didn't do it quietly. He released a statement through his JAG officer, clarifying that he would not shield wrongdoing and that he had been a victim of the same deception that targeted my father. He didn't hate her. He just erased her from his life with the same efficiency he used on a mission. I didn't stick around to watch Delaney's world burn. I didn't need to. I had what I came for. I drove to the Pines at sunset. The facility was quiet, bathed in the golden light of the early evening. I walked past the reception desk, and this time, Sarah smiled at me and buzzed me through without a word. I found my father in the solarium, watching the birds settle into the oak trees outside. He looked tired. The lucid moment had passed, and he was back in the fog, drifting somewhere between yesterday and 20 years ago. But when I sat down next to him, he turned his head. He looked at me, and for a second, just a second, there was recognition in his eyes. "Hi, Dad," I said softly. He reached out a shaking hand. I took it. His grip was weak, But it was there. Safe, he whispered. Yeah, I said, squeezing his hand. You are safe. I paid the bill. We are good. I sat there with him as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and triumphant gold. I thought about Delaney, probably sitting in a lawyer's office right now, trying to spin a story that no one believed anymore. I thought about the years I had spent feeling small, feeling invisible, feeling like the background character in her dazzling life. But background characters are the ones who keep the world running. We are the ones who check the locks. We are the ones who pay the bills. We are the ones who save the evidence. I didn't need Delaney to apologize. I didn't need her to admit she was wrong. The truth was on the record, stamped with a judge's seal and preserved in the cloud forever. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean, salt-tinged air. I had spent 34 years being the sister who cleaned up the mess. Today, I was just the daughter who sat in the sun. And for the first time, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let's chat. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people. Your support means the world to me.